Hello, I'm Adolf Alvarez. Today is August 27, 2016. Now I'm your host of Day One. And like I promised you, we have our official first guest today, David Lopez. How you doing, David?
I'm good. I'm blessed. I woke up. That's
Amen.
good.
Amen. That's the answer we're looking for. Let's just get right into it. I want to ask David a couple of questions. And number one, David, I wanted to ask you is, before you met Christ, how was your life outside here in the world? What was it about your life? I mean, I know you personally, but the viewers don't know you. Can you tell us a little bit about your life before you met Christ?
My life was crazy. Just just going from one thing to another. I mean, it didn't have no meaning. It was just violence, drugs, drinking, and it was just crazy. That's the only thing can explain it.
Right, and let me tell you what. And I know David personally. I've known him outside the world. If anybody in Fort Worth, he needs no introduction at all. David, I've known him from just on the outside the circle. What I mean by that, though, is I knew who David was on the streets, and he was a man who didn't fear anything. He didn't fear any person. He didn't fear any man, and he wasn't scared of anybody. And I know that David, was a force to be reckoned with. Him and his brother Joe Barrera at the time. But there was a group of them, and I know that they made a name for themselves. And so my most important question, David, is you talk about how your life was crazy and into drugs and alcohol. I really don't remember you drinking that much or into drugs back then when in the younger age. But when did Christ intervene in your life? Can you talk to us about that? And why don't you give us your testimony?
Well, all of my testimony is really too long, but Christ intervened when I was in prison. When I was in prison with a 55-year sentence for murder, and I was in one of the worst prisons in Texas, Beto unit, and there was a cellmate of mine that had took some pictures of my daughter, and it was when she was a little girl in a bathing suit, so it's not a stretch to imagine what he was doing with those pictures. And this was someone that was supposed to be a homeboy of mine, and someone that I fed, helped him. He needed stuff because he didn't get a lot of money. So anyway, it felt just like betrayal. And he was younger than me, but he was real scrawny. And so I know what I'm capable of, so I had planned to kill him. And well, at least I wanted to. But by the time he came into the cell, after I discovered the pictures in his stuff, I had cooled down, and I started thinking about it. And but as time went on, I was losing sleep over it because I was planning a way to do it and get away with it. And one night, I was just laying there, and he was on the bunk, and I was on my bunk, and he was asleep. Now, and I could have did it at any time, and I just started thinking, well, what am I doing here, losing sleep over this? And so I started praying. I said, Lord, please take this from me. You know what I want to do to this man. And, after that, within a couple of days, circumstances led to him being put out there to what? So the authorities knew what he was doing, and he lost his job and everything. And
So when you said the authorities knew what he was doing, I don't mean to stop you, but you mean that it's actually a crime to have pictures of an individual or somebody knowing?
well, the way he had it, they labeled it kiddie porn,
Okay.
but he was cutting things out of
Right.
stuff and putting them all together and using them with other stuff.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. That's yeah. But that's okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, and and at the time, there's
That's a crime.
it's not a crime in prison, but you're not allowed any pornographic stuff. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
and he had it with other pornographic stuff.
Okay.
So he got moved out of my cell, and when I first got in trouble, my prayer was, because I grew up in church, I just rebelled. My prayer was, Lord, if you want me to get out, I know you can get me out, but I don't want to get out and just be the same. Keep me in here as long as it takes for me to change. And it took 18 years, but that's, he was faithful to that prayer because he knew it came from my heart. And it didn't happen overnight. So I go through the parole process, and I see the parole commissioner, and I ask him about a faith-based program through the prison system, and it's called Interchange, and it's by IFI. And he told me he was going to think about it, and then I get an answer a month later, and they put me in that program, and it's an 18-month program, and it's real intense. Classes about manhood, classes about the Bible, and when I first got there to that unit, it was in summertime, and they placed us in the cells. And when you're in the program, you're in the dormitories. So it was hot. So I said, well, they're having church every night. I'm gonna go to church, get out of this heat, and get some AC. So I was just talking to this guy at work the other day, and told him, I said, well, yeah, that's how it happened. I was just getting out of the heat. But within maybe a week or something, I found myself clapping, singing the songs, because I knew some of the songs, and some of them were new. But as I started singing the songs, and then within the second week, God got a hold of me. And my plan was just to go through the program so I could get out. But God had other plans, and it's just I had to rededicate my life to Him.
Well, let me ask you something. When you were in the prison, were you affiliated with gangs or something like that in prison?
Well, we didn't call it gangs, but the prison system they had to change up their vocabulary because we didn't act like a real gang. It was the Tango Blast.
Okay.
It just started out as Tango, then they changed it to Tango Blast. But they called it a security threat group because we didn't act as the older prison gangs, but we all came together when we needed to, and it was a threat to the well-being of others if we wanted it to be.
The reason I ask you that is, what did your brothers think about this when you were going through the transformation in prison? About joining the churches? Were they with you about that, or were they against you?
In there, at that unit, it don't matter because everybody's trying to go home. And before I went there on the Beto unit, I wasn't living as a Christian. I mean, throughout the whole prison sentence, there was times that I did try on my own strength, but at the back of my mind, I knew if somebody came up to me and did something, I was gonna have to react to that. So I could never follow through with my walk with God.
Right.
And but for the most part, when you want to serve God in there, they're gonna let you. But they're gonna be watching you, so they know who's real and who's not. They know if someone's just going through it so no one will mess with them.
Right. So how long was this before you released from prison? The transformation was going on in the church. I mean, that you were doing the transformation inside you before you were released.
It was the 18 months when the 18 months started, and and like I told the prison commissioner the parole commissioner, I needed to change my way of thinking because it wasn't so much institutionalized. It's from before I got in prison. I already knew if someone messed with me, then this is what I was going to do. And that way of thinking led me to prison.
Right.
And then when I got in prison, it just got worse.
Right.
So
what changed? So before you entered into the prison system and given your life to Christ, now that you're back out here in the world, what can you honestly say that has changed you? God has changed you. We both can agree on that. But the feelings and the anger, because we have people that don't know you out here now, right? And so you don't have that respect from the streets anymore, right? And so people maybe cut you off on the road, and people do things to you, and that, like you said, I'm gonna quote you. You know what you're capable of doing. So how do you blend that? How does God pull you from that? How does He do that with you?
Well, my prayer was that He would remind me of what's going to happen. And, I put people in my life that I'm accountable to, like my wife, the biggest one. And so if I'm having a problem with someone at work or someone on the road or something, I text her real quick, just tell her to pray for me. And God will put something in my memory, or someone that will jog that memory that, do you want to go back there?
Right.
I mean, that's not, yeah, you're alive in prison, but you're not living. You're just existing. So he shows me everything that he's allowed me to experience out here, and it's real living. I mean, yeah, we go through our struggles, but it's real living. It's not just sitting there day after day.
Right. And so what would you give, if you could look at the video and the viewers right now, and you could say, and you could give people the encouragement, because, we've got people out there that are gangbanging today. We've got people who are getting shot today here in this area that we live in, that I know that I grew up in, that didn't used to be like that. If you could get some advice to people who would say, "Oh, this guy just doesn't want to go back to prison. He's just doing this because he didn't want to go back to prison. He's just doing it's a show. He's actually doing this not because God touched him, but because he just want to go back to prison." What would you tell them?
Well, I mean, that's at my in the forefront of my mind. Yeah, I don't want to go back to prison. I don't think any sane person would want to go back to prison. But it's that God has shown me that I went through all this, but his hand was on me even when I walked away from him. He still controlled everything. And I mean, I had good jobs in there. I had it easy. I mean, the bosses would come bring us food, stuff like that made it easier. Still in prison.
Right.
But he showed me that I went through all that so I could get out and tell others of what I went through, so they don't have to go through it.
Mm.
Because there's other people that may not be able to go through it. Because I've seen a lot of guys that, after I think it was 7 years when my friend Joe went through there, and I seen him over the weekend because of they messed up. Somehow he was supposed to go to another unit on transit, and he went there, and I saw him, and he said, "You've been here almost 10 years already?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "How did you do it?" And I was like, "Well, you just do it, and there ain't no choice." But because that was them guards over there at Ferguson unit would get in your face all the time if they were having a bad day.
Right.
So, not saying Joe wouldn't be able to go through it, but I mean, there's other people that I saw that couldn't take it.
Right.
And that killed themselves.
Yeah.
Because, that was a reality.
Having a man in front of your face screaming, and people would either do something or do something to themselves because they couldn't handle that. And so God has kept you definitely from that. We know that God has kept you, and I know that as your mother is, I know her personally, but the viewers don't know. As your mother, is she is she a Christian?
Yes.
Okay.
She's a prayer warrior, and that's not the only reason, but I know that's the main reason that I'm here, because of her prayers and other prayers too. But I know when it says, Jesus said in the Bible, go into your prayer closet and pray, that's the way she prays. And it's just, God has seen everything. And I've seen her strength through it. And now, growing up, my role model was my brothers and my dad. I wanted to be like them. And now I see that the warrior spirit is in her because she's a prayer warrior. God placed that spirit of fighting, but it's not physical. Now I see that it's more spiritual. That I need to be fighting the battle spiritual, fight against the enemy. And because I heard a message last week, he don't take no breaks.
No.
So we should always be on guard to
And
take the fight to him.
And you talk about the enemy, the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. Are you involved in the church now?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell me what I know that. Can you tell me what your title is in the church?
No, I'm just an usher.
An usher. But this is something. But you're staying involved in the church. You're staying busy in the church.
Well, I mean, if we're not together with other believers,
that's right.
The devil wants us to be alone, isolated, because then he could work on our minds and tell us lies. Because Jesus said he's the father of lies, so the devil will be there and get us. And then if you're not careful, if you're by yourself all the time, he got you where he wants you, and he can tell you any lie and you're going to believe it.
That's right. You know, Jesus Christ even had 12 disciples. When Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came down to this world, he even had 12 disciples that knew who he was. Even though we had one that betrayed him, we understood now that Jesus Christ had to be betrayed in order to go to the cross, in order to give us salvation and eternal life. You know, David, I know that you have more of a testimony out there, and I know that there's much more to give. You know, I'm thankful for the 15 minutes that you've taken out here to just give us a little example of what you went through. Well, it's a big example for those that are out there that are maybe struggling, that want to give up, that feel like prison is the only way that they can stay, or you know, they continue to do things in the world, they get caught up. Is there any last message you want to give, or maybe a question I haven't asked that maybe you want to that you want to?
They're just like I said. My role models growing up were my dad and my brothers, and all of them went to prison. And at a young age, they started at a young age. And I see that now with other young men and of our culture, of different cultures, that the role models they have are guys that have went to prison. And that's not what being a man is. Being a man is loving your family, loving your wife, taking care of them, providing for them as best you can. I mean, yeah, you don't have to make all this money or whatever. I mean, times have changed.
Right.
But just being there for them, being there for your family, being a man of God, and you know, we're supposed to be the priest of our household, and that means what we get from God, we give to them. You know, I mean, it's not hard, but people make it hard. They think they can't do it, and really, to tell you the truth, we can't. I can't do it. I can't do it on my own. I need God's strength in me every day. And that's the only way that I can do anything, is through his strength. And that's, you know, I just want, if any young men see this, I just hope and pray that y'all see if you look around, there are men who can be an example to you of how to do things and not have to go through. Because there's a wrong way and right way to do everything, but there's a harder way to do it. And why go through hardship if you don't have to? There's people who have set examples, and you see their examples over many years. So, I mean, there was people for me, but I didn't want to look at them because they weren't my dad, they weren't my brothers. Because I just wanted to look up to my dad and my brothers. But I had uncles, I had people in the church that I could have looked to as examples to a better way. So, you know, that's really what I hope somebody would take that into consideration.
Amen. What church do you go to?
Teaching Word Faith Center.
Is it located off of?
It's at 7712 South Freeway in Fort Worth.
And who's your pastor?
Pastor Joe Barrera.
Amen. Thank you for having Joe. Thank you for Joe David. Thank you.
Got a new name.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Joe Barrera right now. We're gonna have him on next. David, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate your time.
You.
Thank you, sir.